And welcome to Watch Your Why, hosted by Doug at Promax Marketing. Today we have Mr. Dave Kovar. So thank you, sir, for being on our show today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, so I think Mr. Kovar, and again, help me out if I get any of these things wrong. He has a black belt in 10 different styles. Is that right?
I do. Yes.
So if you're ever looking for a man who's an expert in a lot of stuff, this is
So
our
no,
guy.
what it means is I have a little knowledge in a broad area. I'm not really good at anything. I just know a little bit about a lot. That's really what it means.
We'll go with that if that's how you feel. But again, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate that. Like I said, we talked a little bit before the show. I know you just made a trip to Australia. Had anything exciting happen while you were there?
Man, it's a great country. Yeah, it's a great country. So I've been over there probably 10 times, and I got to stay in this really cool town called Terrigal. It's about, I don't know, an hour north of Sydney on the coast. It's just gorgeous little. I've been there a bunch of times, and had a nice couple of relaxing days. Then did a couple of events and got back at it. So all good.
Awesome, awesome. Like I said, I've never been to Australia, but it's one of those things that's on that punch list, bucket list. It's going one day I'll get there. One day I'll get there. Uh,
Yeah, it's a great country. Yeah, yeah, I really enjoy the people there.
do you notice in the martial arts world, is there really a difference between how they teach or the styles that they teach and the things that we do here in the States?
Yeah, there is. In and The martial arts is really good in Australia. There's a lot more. Now of course Muay Thai is growing a lot in the United States. It's been around a lot longer there, I guess, because proximity to Thailand's closer. I guess they do a lot more Japanese and Okinawan martial arts over there than we do, and they've got a lot of. It's interesting because there's a lot of a very common layout is a really giant like warehouse space. You'll see a lot of these, but there's schools over there. There's the one gentleman, a friend of mine, his name is Master Ridvan Manaf. He's in the Sydney area. He's got 1,200 members in one location. So there's a lot of super centers out there, and then they do a lot of things through like satellite schools, a lot more than you'll see in the States. Kind of like you see that a lot in the UK too, to where they rent out a town hall a couple nights a week for a program. It's pretty common out there that you'll see that as well.
Wow.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. So that and But as far as I think they were when I first went over there was 2006 to do a business seminar for EFC, like that was 18 years ago, and they were a bit behind business wise than we were then, but I think they've mostly caught up now, and they're really good quality martial arts and they understand the business now.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the biggest problem I think we even run across in the States is that we've got some amazing people that open up a martial arts school that are so physically gifted and talented, but then they get into the business part of it, and it's just like, I mean, we don't know that. So
Yeah,
where
and
the
and
failure
it, I
occurs.
mean, a lot of people will step over a dollar to pick up a dime, so to speak. They're really, like, how often have I had someone say, "I'm not going to go to any business, and I don't need that stuff." It's like, oh man, there's so much, yeah, there's so much great information out there, and it's a combination of information and motivation, right? You got to have both of them, and it's different than like I'm bragging now, but I opened up my first school of 1978, so this is 46 years ago. And back we had no idea. There was nothing available as far as I went to my first business summit seminar. It was a Grandmaster Junior seminar in February of 1987. And that was when, like, the first time I saw phone scripts and an introductory course. It was like all this stuff, like it was and we had to make a lot of stuff up along the way. And now there's so much great information for a school owner out there. They've just got to be willing to you know work hard and apply. But I'll tell you the difference now between like running a school in 2024 versus, let's say, 1994, is that back, like, let's say in the 80s and 90s, you could be mediocre and still make a living doing martial arts because the supply and demand was so different. But now, kind of the starting point, you have to be really good. Your skill, you have to be a good martial artist, a good teacher, a good businessman, or you're just not even getting out of the gate unless you're like dad owns the building or your wife is a doctor and you don't have to make any money. But if you're supporting yourself teaching martial arts in this day and age, you got to be good. And that's okay, by the way. It's still a good time to be in the industry. You just have to be good and be willing to work hard.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's a huge industry. It's a great industry. And when we've got to make sure that we're prepared as we're going in, and there's lots of room still. I mean, there's so many people that haven't taken a martial arts class across the United States that, when we talk about competition, there's not really any competition. We just got to get people in the door.
Well, you know what, the way I look at this is that like, let's just say, John Smith in the middle of America has a school with 200 members in it. And the question I would ask that guy is, he's worried about other schools in his area. I'd say, all right, John, if you'd never opened up, ever opened up or even started martial arts, how many of those 200 members would training somewhere else? And who knows what the answer is, but I would say 20. What it is, we create our market, and so most people, their students, kind of proactively helped them grow their school, and if they weren't there, it wouldn't have happened. And so yeah, we really aren't. Not that I don't want a school opening up across the street from any of my locations, but if they do, what am I going to do about it? It only makes you work harder. It's kind of like we gotta be, we just gotta continue to put out a great product so people will knock on our door trying to get in.
So you've done a lot of things with Satori and so on. With technology, I guess is where I want to go with this. Is that where do you see the biggest advantage of technology had been in our past, and what do you think about where it might go in our future?
Well, I'm first off, I'm about as technologically advanced as a rock. So but I have some smart guys on my team that do understand it.
I understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, you think about like, the video, like really I had a Super 8, camera when I was a kid, but the film was expensive. So you'd only get little parts of it and there was no sound. And then of course it was like, you start seeing like videotapes, video cameras coming out with VHSs, and that was like the late 70s, early 80s, right? And like, as a matter of fact, I competed hundreds of matches. I've only got 4 on tape because nobody ever did them, right? But anyway, the point is that was pretty cutting edge technology. As a matter of fact, we did a series on like that I advertised in Black Belt magazine in the early 80s. That was self-defense videos that we put together, and we used a little stencil to kind of to rub out the letters to get them right for the ad, and that was high tech then, and we had kind of a dot matrix look across the videos with the title and whatnot, and then of course it's just been amazing how it's evolved to where so where I think that one of the things with technology, I think it's going to make our industry more valuable than versus less valuable, because I think the more people are connected online, the more they're going to need a real strong social connection. And that's where we come into play. So I think we're smart to use technology to the best of our abilities to supplement people's training. Like, for example, it's now, if someone's on vacation, they can still train on Zoom wherever they are, all those kind of things that we couldn't do before. But I think actually it's going to continue to make the need for an actual live group, super important as people become more separated online.
Yes, sir. I didn't know what Zoom was until March of 2020.
Right. I get.
But it was
now here we are right now. Yep.
And on Zoom, and it's become a part of regular everyday stuff, I think, for most of us. So, and for most of us, again, we ended up teaching classes, via Zoom. So it was like, we didn't have an option. You just you either turned to do this or you didn't teach classes at all. And having the ability to be able to continue to do this, I think that's an innovation that we would have never dreamed of, or maybe not in a short period of time. Anyway, I would have never dreamed of. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you think that we face as an industry that won't be very hard to overcome?
Man, well, I think to me, if you look at like one of the challenges that we're working on right now is, and this is, I hate to have my perception, kind of color the waters, because who knows if this is really true, but in my perception in our schools and clients that we have, we've seen the same thing as post-COVID parents tend to be a little bit more transactional and a little less committed to their kids. training. It seems like they quit easier. You know, when it's easy to register online, it's easier to quit online, you know?
Yes, sir.
And so we are doubling down on really trying to educate new families, not just not just kids, but for our adult students too, but especially parents of junior students about the importance of long-term training at the very beginning. And you know, how kind of a lesson we talk about is, do you want your child to develop the quit muscle or the perseverance muscle? Right. And by the way, you don't wait until your kid wants to quit to have this discussion. You do it right out of the gate. And you know, hey, Doug, there's going to come a time when your son might want to quit. I want to let you know. I don't know about you. Would you like your child to develop perseverance? I figured you would. Well, let me tell you, the only way someone develops perseverance is by wanting to quit and not quitting. Okay. So as long as you see value in the program, don't ever worry if your son loses interest, because he's going to lose interest for a while. Everybody does. Keep him training, because what I see happening now, Doug, is a lot of parents let their kids out of the program. You know, they don't want to come to class, they let them go. What's happening is they're developing their child's quit muscle, and it's just going to get easier and easier to quit. And so what's important is we want our children to develop a strong perseverance muscle. And basically that's a message that we're given all the time in one way, shape, or form. Okay. But from the very beginning. And just so by the way, it's going to help our business, right? But it's also true, right? And then other things that we're planting seeds for long-term training. Like if I go to one of our schools and I meet some parent and their daughter's Sarah, she's a little yellow belt and she's 7 years old, and I'll shake her hand and introduce her, you know, myself to her, and then I'll look at the mom and I'll say, hey, you know, she's going to be training with us until she goes away to college, don't you? I'm just planting a seed for long-term training. And then I'll throw in, there's something magical about that happens when a kid grows up in a martial arts school. And by the way, you know this to be true. It's an absolute fact. So it's not like I'm not making that up. I'm just drawing attention to it. So that's something that I think, you know, we have to be proactively planting those seeds for long-term training, not reactive when someone wants to quit. If you say, yeah, I think Bobby wants to quit, I'm not going to bring anymore, and I sit down and have the quit muscle, versus perseverance muscle, I'm almost too late. You know what I'm saying? It's like I got to be ahead of the curve. So that's really an area that we're focusing on. And then we're doubling down in you know, old school recruiting methodologies as well. You know, it's like we've of course got a really strong you know, presence online. We do check all the boxes as far as a company, or the most of them as far as what we should be doing. But we also just did some so we study where all our new members are coming from, and still 52% of our members are old school stuff. You know, referrals, birthday parties, buddy days, belt promotions, you know, events, booths, etc. So we double down on that, and it's kind of like there's plenty of members out there that want you. There's plenty of students that want your potential students that want to be members at your school. You just have to dig a little deeper to get them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that grassroots, you know, marketing concept, you know, I don't think it's ever going to go away, or at least it shouldn't, because there are so many people that see us. And, you know, how many times does it take for somebody to go, oh, yeah, so that's the karate school down the street? Well, I mean, maybe I don't need the karate school down the street today, but next month, next year, you know, whatever it might be, there's the karate school again, you know, and there's your reminder of, yeah, let's take our kid down there and be able to learn this cool stuff that he was talking about.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Again, as an industry, I think sometimes we get away from that, because again, it's like you said, it's so easy to be able to sit there and you know, and do a Facebook ad on your phone. Well, not easy.
Yeah. And yeah, for a lot of people, yeah, it is. And by the way, if it's working for you, great. How many people have I known that I've known that we're doing great, and all of a sudden the algorithms change, and all of a sudden nothing's happening, and they forgot how to do their, you know, all the old school stuff. So we really try to, you know, balance that out as much as possible.
Yeah, I remember I did my first Facebook ad. It took me about an hour and a half to go through and do it. And I thought, boy, this is going to be great. You know, and I think I got, you know, one prospect out of that in like the first 30 days. And I thought, this Facebook stuff sucks. And then, you know, 3 years later, it's like the world is hinging on Facebook, you know, and everything has to go through there. And then they started changing everything. So, you know, algorithms, and there's it's like daily still. And Google's not any better. You know, they still change stuff as well.
Yep.
Well, so let's go back to young Mr. Kovar. So what is it that got you involved in the martial arts to begin with?
So you know, it would have been in the mid 60s. I'm 5 or 6 years old. My family's on a road trip somewhere. I don't really even know where. We were living in Montana, but I saw a silhouette of a guy doing a flying sidekick on a billboard, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. You know, it's kind of like martial arts found me. I didn't find it. And then at the time, kids just didn't do that stuff. My folks wouldn't have anything to do with it. So in 1971, I started wrestling. That was my first, combat sport. And then a couple of years later, my older brother, Tim, who was my business partner for 20 years, went away to college and did a year of training and came back and said, Mom and Dad, you got to let Dave do martial arts. So I started, martial arts training, in 1973. And just kind of took to it, and it's never looked back. So this is kind of I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, but in the meantime, I'm fine.
Me too. What is it? Something about if you can make it through the first 50 years without growing up, you don't have to. I think I'm good.
Like that, man. I like that. Then I'm good.
So 50 years of training in martial arts, that's how do you keep the motivation, to be able to do that for so long?
So, I still train pretty regular, I do a lot of jujitsu. That's probably where I spend most of my time. And the reason I love all the arts, but I feel my age the least when I'm grappling, believe it or not. I got some knee issues and some hip issues and, just the stuff that comes with life and training. But I feel the least restricted doing that. So sometimes it's not like I'm dying, like I'm going to go train here in about an hour, and I have some young, guys that are gonna, be going at it. And it's not like I go, great, but it's like I go, come on, man, you're gonna love it, get down there. And when I leave class, I always try to anchor in. When I leave training, I always try to anchor it in, whether it be bag work or whatever, or sparring, whatever that I'm doing. When I'm done with it, I try to remember how I feel at that very moment. Like, oh man, aren't you glad you did it? The answer is yes. And then I think the other thing is that uh, not a lot of guys from my generation are training much anymore. Most of them are pretty beat up, and I understand. And it's not that they did anything wrong necessarily, but it's like some of them maybe didn't do as much right as they could have, if that makes any sense at all. And
Does.
I'm blessed with really good genes. All four of my grandparents lived into their 90s. My mom and dad into their late 90s, and so unless I get hit by a Mack truck, I'm going to live to be 100 years old. I mean, but I've also I kind of had some really good role models as far as health goes. So I'm by the way, you can do everything right and you hit by a truck or end up with
Jeez.
cancer. But
Yeah.
who knows? But I'm trying to stack the odds I have for a long time, in favor of long term by really being focused on my health and my fitness as well as my martial arts. And I think that just also kind of helps the outlook. It's like I don't know about you, but when you're sick or injured or beat up or sore, you're not as good to the people around you. So one of the mindsets that I talk about and really push with my team and my students is I take great care of myself because the world needs me at my best. In other words, if I want to be good for anybody else in my world, I really got to kind of, what can I do to make sure that I'm at my best? And if I'm feeling good about myself, then I'm going to handle situations better. I'm going to handle interactions better. I'm going to be a better teacher. I'm going to be a better boss. I'm going to be a better husband, a better father, etc. So I think that's for me really important. And I can always do better, but I do a pretty good job of staying focused on that.
That's one of the pictures I think that we posted as we kind of drew up to the time tomorrow for this podcast to be there. English is my first language, even though I'm living in Mexico. Is the one where you've got your gi open, you got those abs showing on there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going, oh man, I am so jealous. I know I have them, but they're just hidden.
Well, yeah. So you every now and then you're feeling lean, and when you are, you got to take the picture. So there you go.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have too many lean days with this body. It's always been a little bit of the what is it? Somebody would say, gee, Mr. Rankin, you got some big calves. And I was going, they're just for show. They don't really do anything. They've been carrying my big body around for 50 years. So
Yes, sir. I gotcha. I gotcha.
so what do you think? Tell me, let's talk a little bit about 10 black belts. And a lot of people, at one time would be going, oh, you know, cross training is not a very good thing to do in martial arts styles because you're going to get confused about all these things. So what would be if somebody asked you going, and I am, you know, so what do you think about cross training in different martial arts styles? How would you answer that to somebody who's interested in being able to take more than one thing on at a time?
Yeah, I think for me, everybody's martial arts journey is different, and I have nothing but respect for someone that's stuck with their one style. They did one thing their whole life and they're still doing it. Hey, that's great, man. That's your journey. As long as you're still training, that's great. I think I have a bad case of martial arts ADHD, actually. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I just get excited about stuff and I didn't consciously set out like, I just, started training with this guy and, started training with that guy and whatnot. And for me, the more I train in different styles, there's you figure out that there's only so many ways the elbow bends. Like it's all related. A front kick is a front kick. And I don't speak any other languages other than English. I took 4 years of Spanish one. Okay, it's my joke. I'd flirt with my Spanish teacher and she passed me for 4 years. So, but the point is my understanding is, languages become easier once you have two or three. Another one comes a little easier. And it's the same with musical instruments, right? Someone that can play two or three musical instruments can usually pick up a third and fourth. And I think it's kind of like that in martial arts. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And so like there's so many similarities that versus differences but there's some unique stuff as well. So I would just say to people listening, it's like you don't have to cross train, but you need to have a good foundation in something. I think it's the worst when you don't have a good foundation. It's like you have to you have a base of something, right? To work off of, but kind of like that's your language, and then I think, excuse me, that's your alphabet, so to speak. Okay, and then from there you deviate. But I kind of feel like in 2024, there was an excuse not to be well-rounded 30 years ago because the information wasn't available, right? But there's no real excuse anymore to not understand. You don't like to have to enjoy Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I kind of feel as a martial artist in the 21st century, you oughta have some basic skills. Why wouldn't you? If you're going to be a teacher, why wouldn't you want to teach your students, if you teach self-defense, how to get somebody off of them if they're mounted, right? And so that would be an example about, yeah, and you don't have to like be great at Krav Maga, but you ought to have a sense of more realistic self-defense techniques. Then the old guy holds a knife out and you do a crescent kick and spinning hook kick, and that's your knife defense, right? That was what people thought for a long time. So we know better now. And so I kind of feel, by the way, if you want to do that stuff, that's great for theatrics or athleticism, more power to you. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have a bunch of kids that do XMA, movie karate, and I love it, man. It keeps them in the school, it keeps them training, it gives them something to aspire toward. But I also want them to understand like self-defense as well, right? And I think the thing that I would emphasize more than anything else, and I don't know how we got on this subject, but I guess I'm talking, is I met an old grandmaster. His name was Grandmaster James Matosi, and he was actually the guy that brought Kempo from Japan to Hawaii, and I actually have a black belt diploma from him. And one of very few people. By the way, I didn't do anything to get it. I was just at the right place at the right time. But here, my point is when I would meet with him, I would ask them important questions that a 19 or 20-year-old kid will meet, like what's better, a front kick or a side kick, and just dumb stuff. Do you hold a fist like this, or do you hold it like this? And he'd answer and he'd shake his head and go, but he basically said it was, Dave, true self-defense is not defending yourself against a knife fight. It's defending yourself against sickness, injury. I'm paraphrasing here,
Yes,
and it was really stuck with me, so if you're really teaching self-defense, it's not just what do you do in the back alley. It's like, no, very few of us are going to die in a back alley knife fight. We're going to die for not taking good care of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so that's I think a foundation that is sometimes neglected, but I think I look at health and fitness as part of martial arts.
right. You're absolutely right. And then there's, like I said, I'm a roller coaster. It's one of those things where I was probably in the best shape of my life around 50, and then at 55, not so much.
Okay.
At 60, we're working on it again.
I get it.
Oh, So what about, let's kind of wrap things up here. What have you got going on with Kovar Systems? Anything exciting coming up on
So,
the,
we've got, I've got events, I've got like this weekend, I'm going up to where the heck am I going? I'm going to Seattle this weekend to do instructor college. And then we've got some regional events. We've got a ProMac. If you go to kovarsystems.com, that we've got events, one in Sacramento, one in Dallas, and one in Florida yet this year. And then we have our big event, ProMac International, next May, where we have people come from all over the country. And so what's interesting right now, there's most of the people out there doing events right now in the industry, honestly, are all pretty good. There's a lot of great information out there. So whether it be, wherever you go to get your information, if you're a school owner, you ought to be connected somewhere. You ought to, because it's like you want to be around people that are going to inspire you, are going to make you, inspired to want to get to the next level, so to speak. And, with good information and in what we talked about earlier, that have good information that's going to motivate you as well. And
sir?
so I think staying connected, finding a role model, finding a mentor is worthwhile. And it may not always be cheap, but if someone applies their stuff, it'll always pay for itself.
See, I should have paid you on an amazing segue into the Apogee Summit.
Very cool.
So you're going to be a part of the Apogee Summit, which has been live. It's been in person the last 4 years. And because I moved to Mexico and I'm too lazy to go back to the States to do this, we decided to do virtual this time. And it's going to, hopefully, we'll have a broader reaching audience. Warner Robins, Georgia is not a mecca of anything. It's kind of hard to get to. So I said, there's been some struggles in transportation. You fly into Atlanta, it's an hour and a half drive or 2 hours to get there, and so on. So we tried virtual this year to see how it works out. You're going to be a part of that. We appreciate you helping Apogee out, which the event's going to be on August 21st. That's a Wednesday, and we're going to start at 11 o'clock Eastern time. And then we're going to run through there. And like I said, we appreciate you being a part of Apogee so that you can continue to share these words of wisdom with those of us who need to hear them. Like I said, I've heard you say a lot of things before in the past, and every time we talk, there's always something that you may have said before that I take a different way and I hear it differently this time. So like I said, I appreciate you doing that for me.
All right. Well, I wish you the best, and we'll talk at the event. I wish you the best in your new life in Mexico.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And for all of you that are watching, we'll see you guys next week.